The white colonial house on Maple Street looked like something out of a magazine. Perfect lawn, colorful flowers lining the walkway, and not a single thing out of place. The neighbors would often glance at it while walking their dogs, admiring how pristine everything looked. The woman who lived there kept to herself mostly, but she was always polite when someone said hello. Her name was Linda Patterson. And if you asked anyone in the neighborhood, they'd tell you she seemed nice enough. A single mother, worked from home, doing something with computers and design. The kind of person who waved from her porch but never really stopped to chat for long. Nothing unusual about that. Plenty of people valued their privacy. When the help wanted ad went up on the community board at the local grocery store, it caught attention immediately. Live-in housekeeper needed. Good pay, private room, meals included. In this economy, that kind of offer didn't come around often. The ad was simple and straightforward. Light cleaning, meal preparation, laundry. The usual stuff. That's how Carmen Rodriguez found herself standing on Linda's front porch on a Tuesday morning in late September, clutching her resume and hoping this would be the fresh start she needed. Carmen was in her early 40s, a hard worker who'd recently gone through a difficult divorce. She needed stability, and this job seemed perfect. Linda opened the door with a warm smile. She was probably in her mid-30s, with tired eyes that suggested she didn't sleep much. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she wore jeans and a sweater that looked expensive but comfortable. "You must be Carmen," Linda said, stepping aside to let her in. "Thank you so much for coming." The inside of the house matched the outside perfectly. Everything was clean and organized. The living room had cream-colored furniture that looked barely used. Family photos lined the mantel above the fireplace, though Carmen noticed they all seemed to be of Linda alone or with older relatives. No children in the pictures, which seemed odd for someone who claimed to be a mother. They sat in the kitchen, which smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and fresh coffee. Linda poured them both a cup and began explaining what the job would entail. "I work from home, so I'm here most days," Linda said, wrapping her hands around her mug. "I need someone to handle the household tasks so I can focus on my work. Cleaning the main living areas, the bedrooms upstairs, cooking dinner most nights. Nothing too complicated." Carmen nodded along, jotting down notes. It all sounded reasonable enough. Then Linda's expression became more serious. "There's just one thing that's really important," she said, leaning forward slightly. "The basement is completely off limits." Carmen looked up from her notepad. "Off limits?" "Yes, that's where my office is. I have expensive equipment down there, and I work with confidential clients. I can't have anyone going down there for any reason. The door stays locked, and I'm the only one with the key." Linda's tone was firm but not unkind. "I know it might seem strange, but it's a deal-breaker for me. I need someone who can respect that boundary." Carmen thought about it for a moment. It was unusual, sure, but not completely unreasonable. Plenty of people had private spaces in their homes. "I can respect that," she said. "No problem at all." Linda's shoulders visibly relaxed. "Wonderful. I had a feeling you'd understand." They discussed the other details. Carmen would have the guest room on the second floor. She'd work Monday through Friday, with weekends off unless Linda needed extra help. The pay was better than anything else Carmen had seen advertised in months. "When can you start?" Linda asked. "I could start next Monday if that works for you." Linda smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. "That would be perfect." Carmen moved in the following week with 2 suitcases and a sense of cautious optimism. The guest room was lovely, with a comfortable bed and its own small bathroom. She had a view of the backyard, which was just as well maintained as the front. The first few days went smoothly. Carmen learned Linda's routines and preferences. Linda liked her coffee strong in the morning and usually worked until late in the evening. She was quiet, almost too quiet sometimes. The house felt empty despite 2 people living in it. Carmen noticed that Linda disappeared into the basement every day, always locking the door behind her with a key she kept on a lanyard around her neck. Sometimes she'd be down there for 2 or 3 hours at a stretch. Carmen would hear faint sounds occasionally, maybe music or a television, but nothing she could make out clearly. How's the work going down there? Carmen asked one morning as Linda emerged from the basement, looking exhausted. Oh, demanding clients, tight deadlines, Linda said vaguely. Heading straight for the coffee pot. It wasn't until the second week that Carmen started noticing things that didn't quite add up. The grocery shopping was the first thing. Linda went to the store twice a week, and she always came back with an enormous amount of food. Cases of juice boxes, family-sized boxes of cereal, bulk packages of chicken nuggets and fish sticks, mountains of fresh fruit, enough bread and milk to feed a family of 6. Planning to stock up before winter? Carmen joked as she helped Linda unload the groceries one afternoon. Linda laughed, but it sounded forced. I just hate running out of things. Plus, I donate a lot to the food pantry downtown. Trying to do my part, It made sense, Carmen supposed. But something about the explanation felt rehearsed. Then there was the laundry situation. Carmen handled all the household laundry, and she started finding things that puzzled her. Small t-shirts with cartoon characters on them. Tiny socks that would only fit a young child. Little pajama sets with dinosaurs and princesses printed on the fabric. They were mixed in with Linda's regular clothes, usually buried at the bottom of the hamper the first time Carmen found them. She set them aside and asked Linda about them later. Oh, those, Linda said, barely glancing at the small clothes in Carmen's hands. Her face had gone slightly pale. I'm collecting donations for a children's charity. I pick things up from thrift stores and wash them before dropping them off. Should have mentioned that. Carmen nodded slowly. That's nice of you. Want me to keep them separate from your regular laundry? No, just wash everything together. It's easier that way. But something about Linda's reaction bothered Carmen. The way her hands had clenched when she saw the small clothes, the slight tremor in her voice. And if the clothes were donations, why did they look worn and used rather than new? Carmen tried to push her concerns aside. Maybe she was reading too much into things? People were allowed to have their quirks and their privacy? Linda had been nothing but kind to her. And the job was exactly what Carmen needed right now. Still, as the third week began, Carmen couldn't shake the feeling that something in this perfect house wasn't quite right. She'd catch Linda staring off into space with a haunted look in her eyes. Sometimes Linda would startle at the smallest sounds, jumping when Carmen entered a room, and then there were the nights when Carmen would lie in bed, unable to sleep, and hear the faintest sounds coming from somewhere below. At first, she thought it was just the house settling or maybe pipes creaking. Old houses made all kinds of noises, but one night, lying in the darkness of her room, Carmen heard something that made her sit straight up in bed. It was faint, muffled by walls and distance, but unmistakable. A child crying. Carmen held her breath, straining to hear more. The sound came again, soft and sad, like someone trying to cry quietly. Then she heard Linda's voice, speaking in low, urgent tones. Though she couldn't make out the words, Carmen's mind raced. Linda had said she was a single mother, but there were no children in this house. Were there? She'd never seen any kids, never heard them during the day. The photos on the mantel showed no children. So whose crying was she hearing at night? Carmen lay back down, her heart pounding. She stared at the ceiling, watching shadows move across it from the tree outside her window. Tomorrow, she told herself. Tomorrow she'd pay closer attention. Tomorrow she'd figure out what was really going on in this perfect house with its locked basement and its secrets. Carmen barely slept that night. Every small sound in the house made her alert, listening for that crying again. But after that one moment, everything had gone silent. By the time morning came, she'd almost convinced herself she'd imagined it. Maybe it had been the wind or a neighbor's television, or just her exhausted mind playing tricks on her. She went downstairs to start breakfast, trying to act normal. Linda emerged from her bedroom looking even more tired than usual. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her hands shook slightly as she reached for the coffee Carmen had just brewed. Rough night? Carmen asked, trying to sound casual. Linda wrapped both hands around the mug like she was trying to draw warmth from it. Just work stress. A big project deadline coming up. She took a long sip and closed her eyes. This coffee is perfect. Thank you. Carmen watched her carefully. Linda seemed jumpy, glancing toward the basement door every few minutes. When the mailman knocked with a package, Linda practically leaped out of her chair, her coffee sloshing over the rim of the mug. Sorry, Linda said, grabbing a napkin to wipe up the spill. I'm just on edge today. Too much caffeine, probably. But Carmen noticed Linda hadn't even finished her first cup. Over the next few days, Carmen paid attention to everything in a way she hadn't before. She started keeping mental notes of the strange things happening in the house. It was like once she'd started looking, she couldn't stop seeing oddities everywhere. The food situation became more obvious. Carmen was responsible for putting away groceries and organizing the kitchen. She noticed that the bulk items Linda bought would disappear quickly, far too quickly for just one person eating. A box of granola bars would be full on Monday and nearly empty by Wednesday. A gallon of milk would be gone in 2 days. Carmen started checking the kitchen at night before bed and then again in the morning. Food was vanishing during the overnight hours. Not just snacks either. Whole sandwiches would be missing. Fruit would disappear from the bowl on the counter. It was as if someone was sneaking food in the middle of the night. She thought about mentioning it to Linda but decided against it. Something told her that would be a mistake. Then there was the schedule Linda kept. Every day at noon, Linda would go down to the basement with a tray of food. Not just a lunch for herself, either. Carmen saw the trays before Linda took them down. Multiple sandwiches, cups of juice, cut-up fruit, cookies. Enough food for several people. Big lunch, Carmen commented one day, trying to sound light. Linda's expression tightened. I eat while I work. Don't like to be interrupted once I get started. She headed for the basement door, balancing the tray carefully. But here was the thing that bothered Carmen most. Linda would come back upstairs an hour later with the tray completely empty. Every plate clean, every cup drained. Carmen had watched Linda eat before. She was a small woman who picked at her food, usually leaving half of it on her plate. There was no way she was eating all that food herself. Carmen started finding other things too. Small things that didn't make sense. A box of crayons in the utility closet. A coloring book stuffed behind the cleaning supplies under the sink. A small stuffed bear that had fallen behind the washing machine. When Carmen pulled it out, she saw it was well loved, the kind of toy a child carried everywhere until it was worn and soft. She set it on the dryer, wondering if Linda would say something about it. The toy sat there for 2 days before it disappeared. Carmen never saw Linda take it, but one morning it was just gone. The children's clothes kept appearing in the laundry too, and Carmen noticed they weren't always the same ones. Different sizes, different styles, and they were definitely being worn, not just collected. They had stains, grass marks, food smudges, real signs of real children wearing them. Carmen's mind kept circling back to what Linda had said during the interview. She'd mentioned being a single mother. But where were the children? Carmen had been living in this house for almost a month now, and she'd never seen or heard a child during the daytime. Only those faint sounds at night. Sounds she kept trying to convince herself weren't real. One afternoon, while Linda was in the shower, Carmen stood outside the basement door. She pressed her ear against it, listening. At first there was nothing. Then she heard it. Faint voices. Young voices. A child laughing, quickly hushed by someone else. The sound of small feet running across the floor. Carmen's heart raced. She stepped back from the door like it had burned her. There were children down there. She was sure of it now, but why? Why would Linda keep children hidden in a basement? The possibilities that ran through Carmen's mind were all dark. Had the children been taken? Was Linda holding them against their will? But that didn't match with the woman Carmen had come to know. Linda seemed anxious and secretive, yes, but not cruel. She was tired and stressed, but she didn't seem dangerous. Still, something was very wrong here. Carmen started paying attention to Linda's comings and goings more carefully. Linda left the house 3 times a week, always for exactly 2 hours. She'd tell Carmen she was running errands or meeting with clients. During those times, the house would be completely silent. Carmen would do her cleaning and everything seemed normal. Too normal. One day, after Linda left for her errands, Carmen worked up the courage to approach the basement door again. She tried the handle, knowing it would be locked. It was. She examined the door frame, looking for any way to see inside. Nothing. The door was solid wood. And there were no gaps or windows. As she stood there, frustrated and scared, she heard a sound that made her freeze. A small voice, so quiet she almost missed it. "Hello? Is someone there?" It was coming from the other side of the door. A child's voice, definitely. Young, maybe 7 or 8 years old. Carmen's throat went dry. "Hello?" she whispered back. There was a pause. Then, "Are you the lady who lives upstairs? We hear you walking sometimes." "We," the child had said. "We." "Multiple children." "Yes," Carmen said softly. "I'm Carmen." "Who are you?" Another pause, longer this time. Carmen could hear whispered conversation on the other side of the door, like the child was talking to someone else. "We're not supposed to talk to anyone," the voice finally said. "Mom says it's not safe. She says bad people might try to hurt us if they know we're here." Mom, Linda was their mother. But why would she keep her own children locked in a basement? Carmen heard a door open upstairs. Linda's bedroom door. She was back from the shower. Carmen quickly moved away from the basement door, her heart hammering. She grabbed the vacuum cleaner from the hall closet and started running it, trying to look busy and normal. Linda came downstairs a few minutes later, dressed and ready for her errands. She looked at Carmen with those tired eyes and smiled weakly. "I'm heading out for a bit." "Need anything from the store?" Carmen shook her head, not trusting her voice. After Linda left, Carmen sat down at the kitchen table, her hands shaking. She thought about that small voice on the other side of the door. Children, hidden away, believing their mother was protecting them from something. But protecting them from what? The outside world? Other people? Reality itself? Carmen knew she had to do something, but what? If she called the police without being sure, she could be wrong. Maybe there was an explanation she hadn't considered. Maybe Linda had a good reason for whatever was happening here, but in her gut, Carmen knew. Something was deeply wrong in this house. Those children were prisoners, even if they didn't understand that's what they were. And Linda, for whatever reason, was the one keeping them there. That night, Carmen lay in bed and listened again. The sounds came more clearly now that she knew what to listen for. Soft voices. Small footsteps. The murmur of Linda reading something aloud, maybe a bedtime story. It sounded almost normal, almost loving. But it was happening in a locked basement, hidden from the world, and that made it anything but normal. Carmen made a decision. Tomorrow, she would find a way to get into that basement. She would see with her own eyes what was really happening down there. And then she'd figure out what to do next. She just hoped she wasn't too late. Carmen spent the entire next morning watching Linda like a hawk. She needed to find out where that key was and when she could possibly get her hands on it. The key to the basement hung on a lanyard around Linda's neck, always visible, always within reach. Linda touched it constantly, like a nervous habit, her fingers wrapping around it whenever she seemed anxious. Getting that key seemed impossible. Linda never took it off, not even for a moment. Carmen felt her frustration building with each passing hour. Those children were down there right now, probably sitting in the dark, cut off from sunlight and fresh air and everything normal kids should have, around 11 in the morning. Linda stood up from the kitchen table where she'd been working on her laptop. "I need to run to the bank and the post office," she said, gathering her purse and phone. "Should be back in about an hour." Carmen nodded, watching as Linda headed for the door. The lanyard with the key was around her neck as always. Carmen's hope deflated. But then Linda paused at the door, patting her pockets. "I forgot my wallet upstairs," she muttered. Heading back up the staircase, Carmen heard her moving around in the bedroom above. Then she heard something else. The sound of the shower turning on. Linda was taking a shower before leaving? That was odd, but Carmen didn't question it. This might be her only chance. She crept up the stairs as quietly as possible. Linda's bedroom door was open just a crack. Through it, Carmen could hear the shower running in the attached bathroom. On the dresser, sitting in plain sight, was the lanyard with the key. Carmen's hands were sweating. This was it. She could grab the key, go down to the basement, see what was really happening, and get back before Linda finished her shower. Or she could mind her own business, keep this job, and pretend she never heard or saw anything unusual, but then she thought about that small voice through the door. We're not supposed to talk to anyone. Her hand closed around the key ring before she could talk herself out of it. She moved quickly and quietly back down the stairs, her heart beating so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. At the basement door, she paused for just a second. Once she opened this door, there was no going back. The key turned smoothly in the lock. The door opened without a sound. Carmen stood at the top of the wooden stairs, looking down into the dimly lit space below. She could see a faint glow like lamplight coming from the bottom. "Hello?" she called out softly as she descended the stairs. The basement had been completely transformed. What should have been a dark, concrete storage space had been converted into living quarters. Carmen's eyes adjusted to the light as she reached the bottom of the stairs, and what she saw made her stomach drop. There were 3 children. A girl who looked about 8 years old sat on a worn mattress pushed against one wall, her arms wrapped protectively around 2 smaller children. A boy, maybe 6, and another girl who couldn't have been more than 4 years old. They all stared at Carmen with wide, frightened eyes. The space had been set up with everything they'd need to survive. There were shelves stocked with food, clothes folded neatly in plastic bins, books and toys scattered on the floor. A small bathroom had been installed in one corner, just a toilet and sink behind a curtain. A hot plate sat on a table surrounded by plastic plates and cups. The walls had been painted with cheerful colors, and someone had tried to make it look homey with posters and drawings taped up everywhere, but there were no windows. No natural light except for the lamps plugged in around the room. The only door was the one Carmen had just come through. This wasn't a bedroom. It was a prison made to look like a home. "Who are you?" the oldest girl asked, her voice shaking. She pulled her siblings closer to her. Carmen knelt down slowly, trying not to scare them more than they already were. "My name is Carmen. I work for your mom, helping around the house. I've been living upstairs for about a month now." The little boy peeked out from behind his sister. "You live in the house?" "The real house." "Yes, sweetie." "I do." Carmen's throat tightened. "Can you tell me your names?" The oldest girl hesitated, then seemed to decide Carmen wasn't a threat. "I'm Violet." "This is my brother Owen and my little sister Lily. Are you going to tell people about us?" The question hit Carmen like a punch. "Sweetie, how long have you been down here?" Violet looked at her siblings, then back at Carmen. "I don't know exactly. A really long time. Owen was just a baby when we came down here. He doesn't remember living upstairs." Carmen felt sick. Owen was 6 years old. These children had been hidden away for years. "What about school?" "Do you do schoolwork down here?" "Mom teaches us," Violet said. "She brings down books and workbooks. She says we're homeschooled, but we have to stay down here because the world outside is dangerous. She says there are bad people who would take us away or hurt us if they knew we existed." The little girl, Lily, started to whimper. She was holding a stuffed rabbit, the same kind of well-loved toy Carmen had found behind the washing machine. "Is my mommy okay?" "She looked sad this morning." Carmen's heart broke into pieces. These children loved their mother. They trusted her. They had no idea that what was happening to them was wrong. To them, this basement was normal. This was their entire world. "Your mom is fine?" Carmen said gently. "She's upstairs getting ready to go out." "We hear you walking around sometimes," Owen said, his voice small. "Mom said you were nice. She said you help her so she can spend more time with us." Carmen wanted to cry. Linda had made this sound normal to them. She'd convinced them they were being protected, not imprisoned. And the worst part was, Carmen could see that Linda did love them. This basement wasn't dirty or neglected. The children looked healthy and clean. They had food, clothes, toys. But they had no freedom, no sunlight, no connection to the outside world. "Listen to me carefully," Carmen said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need to go back upstairs now before your mom comes out of the shower. But I need you to know that what's happening here isn't right. You deserve to go outside, to play in the sunshine, to have friends and go to real school." Violet's eyes filled with tears. "But Mom says it's not safe. She says people will hurt us." "Your mom is sick, sweetheart. Not sick like a cold, but sick in her mind. She thinks she's protecting you, but she's actually keeping you from having a normal life." Carmen reached out and took Violet's hand. "I'm going to help you. I promise. But I need a little time to figure out how. Are you going to take us away from our mom?" Owen asked, his lip trembling. That was the question Carmen didn't want to answer. Because yes, eventually these children would have to be separated from Linda. But how did you explain that to kids who loved their mother and didn't understand she was hurting them? "I'm going to make sure you're safe and happy," Carmen said. "That's all I can promise right now." She heard something upstairs. The shower had stopped. Panic flooded through her. She needed to get back up there right now. "I have to go," she said quickly. "Don't tell your mom I was down here, okay?" "Not yet. Can you do that for me?" The children nodded, though they looked confused and scared. Carmen hated leaving them there, but she had no choice. She rushed back up the stairs, her legs shaking. At the top, she locked the door as quietly as possible and sprinted back upstairs to Linda's room. The bathroom door was still closed. Steam was seeping out from underneath it. Carmen put the key ring back on the dresser exactly where she'd found it and practically flew back down to the first floor. She grabbed her cleaning supplies from the hall closet and started wiping down the already cleaned kitchen counters. Trying to look busy and normal, a few minutes later, Linda came downstairs, fully dressed, her hair still damp. The lanyard was back around her neck. She grabbed her wallet from the kitchen counter where she must have left it earlier. "Okay, I'm heading out now," Linda said. "Be back soon." Carmen nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She watched Linda leave through the window, waiting until her car pulled out of the driveway. Then she collapsed into a kitchen chair, her whole body trembling. She'd seen them. She'd talked to them. Those 3 innocent children living in a basement, thinking it was normal, thinking they were being protected. And their mother, who clearly loved them but was so broken inside that she couldn't see she was hurting them. Carmen pulled out her phone and stared at it. She should call the police right now. End this immediately. But something made her hesitate. She thought about Violet's frightened eyes, Owen's small voice, little Lily clutching her stuffed rabbit. If police came bursting in, it would traumatize these kids even more. And Linda, what would happen to her? Carmen had seen enough to know this wasn't about cruelty. Linda was deeply troubled, living in some kind of paranoid fantasy where she believed the world was too dangerous for her children. Carmen needed to think this through carefully. She needed to do this right, in a way that would help these children without destroying them in the process. But one thing was absolutely certain. She couldn't let another day go by with those kids trapped in that basement. Time was running out, and Carmen had to figure out her next move fast. Carmen couldn't eat dinner that night. She pushed food around her plate while Linda sat across from her, eating in silence. Every time Carmen looked at her employer, she saw someone different now. Not just the quiet, private woman who'd hired her, but a mother so consumed by fear that she'd locked her own children away from the world. "You okay?" Linda asked, noticing Carmen hadn't touched her food. "You seem distracted today." Carmen forced a smile. "Just tired. Haven't been sleeping well lately." Linda nodded sympathetically. "I know that feeling. I haven't had a good night's sleep in years." She said it so casually, like it was nothing. But Carmen heard the exhaustion in her voice, saw the weight of whatever was crushing her. After dinner, Linda excused herself and went to her bedroom. Carmen waited until she heard the door close, then she made her move. She needed to understand what had led to this. There had to be answers somewhere in this house. Some explanation for why a mother would do something so extreme. Linda had a small office off the living room, a space Carmen had never been asked to clean. It was always kept closed, the door firmly shut. But tonight, Carmen tried the handle and found it unlocked. She slipped inside and closed the door quietly behind her. The office was cluttered with papers, folders stacked on every surface. A computer sat on the desk, screen dark. Carmen's hands were shaking as she began looking through the papers, careful to remember where everything had been placed, so she could put it all back exactly. The first folder she opened made her breath catch. Medical records? She saw Linda's name at the top and a psychiatric evaluation dated 5 years ago. The words jumped out at her. Severe anxiety disorder, paranoid ideation, postpartum psychosis following the birth of her third child. Carmen sat down in the desk chair, reading through page after page of medical history. Linda had been hospitalized twice after her youngest daughter was born. The records described delusions about people trying to harm her children, conspiracy theories about child trafficking rings operating in their city, an overwhelming conviction that the only way to keep her family safe was to hide them completely. There were notes from therapy sessions. Linda talking about her husband's death 3 years ago, how it had sent her spiraling deeper into paranoia, how she became convinced that without him to protect them, her children were vulnerable to every possible danger in the world. Another folder contained documents from Child Protective Services. Carmen's hands trembled as she read through the case file. Someone had reported concerns about the children 2 years ago. A neighbor who'd noticed that kids who used to play in the yard were suddenly never seen anymore. A social worker had visited the house several times. But Linda had been clever. She'd told them the children were staying with her mother in another state for an extended visit while she dealt with her grief and got mental health treatment. She'd showed them photos, made up stories, created a believable lie. The social worker had noted that Linda seemed to be managing well, attending therapy, taking medication. Eventually, the case had been closed. That must have been when Linda built the basement room, when she brought her children back home but never let them leave that underground space. She'd created a world where she could keep them close but hidden from everyone. Who might take them away? Carmen found journals next, notebook after notebook filled with Linda's handwriting. The entries were frantic, paranoid, heartbreaking. Linda wrote about watching the news and seeing stories of missing children, of abuse cases, of accidents and tragedies. Every story reinforced her belief that the world was too dangerous. "They're safe with me," one entry read. "As long as no one knows they're here, no one can hurt them. I'm doing what any good mother would do. I'm protecting my babies from a cruel world that would destroy their innocence." Another entry from a few months ago. "Violet asked me today when they can go outside again. I told her soon, when it's safe. But when will it be safe? Every day I read about another child hurt, another family destroyed. How can I risk my children's lives? They don't understand now, but someday they'll thank me for keeping them safe." Carmen felt tears running down her face as she read. This wasn't a monster. This was a deeply sick woman who genuinely believed she was doing the right thing. Her love for her children had become twisted by mental illness into something that was hurting them. She found photos tucked into one of the journals. Pictures of the children from years ago, playing in the backyard, smiling at birthday parties, normal happy kids. Then the photos stopped. The last one showed all 3 children on a couch, Lily just a baby in Linda's arms. They looked happy but tired. Linda's eyes in that photo had a wild, frightened look that Carmen recognized now. There were letters, too. Unopened letters from Linda's mother, begging her to answer the phone, asking to see the grandchildren. Worried messages that had gone ignored. Linda had cut off everyone. Her family, her friends, anyone who might question what she was doing or try to interfere. Carmen found a folder labeled Homeschool Curriculum and opened it. Inside were lesson plans, worksheets, educational materials. Linda was teaching the children, trying to give them some kind of education in that basement, but it wasn't enough. They needed real teachers, other kids to play with, experiences beyond 4 walls and artificial light. The most disturbing thing Carmen found was a document titled Emergency Plan. It outlined what Linda would do if anyone discovered the children. She'd written out a story about how they were foster children she wasn't supposed to have, how she'd rescued them from an abusive situation and was protecting them. There were fake names prepared, a whole fictional backstory worked out in detail. Linda had planned for this possibility, prepared lies to protect her secret. Carmen put everything back carefully, her mind reeling. She understood now that this situation was even more complicated than she'd thought. Linda needed help. Professional help. But those children needed to be freed from that basement immediately. The question was how to do both without causing more trauma. She thought about calling the police right then. But it was almost 9 at night. If police came now, they'd storm the house, drag Linda away in handcuffs, and terrify those children who still loved and trusted their mother. It would be traumatic and violent and wrong. Carmen decided to wait until morning. She'd call early, explain the situation carefully, ask for them to send someone who specialized in these kinds of cases. A social worker, a child psychologist, someone who could handle this gently. But first, she needed to do something she'd been putting off. She needed to talk to Linda. Carmen found her employer in the kitchen, making tea. Linda looked up when Carmen entered, and something in Carmen's expression must have given her away because Linda's face went pale. "You know," Linda said quietly. "It wasn't a question," Carmen nodded. "I went into the basement today. I saw them." Linda's teacup clattered against the counter. Her whole body started shaking. "You can't tell anyone. Please, you don't understand. They're my children. I'm protecting them." "From what, Linda?" "From sunshine? From friends? From having a normal childhood?" Carmen kept her voice gentle despite her anger. "They're healthy and fed because you love them? I know you do. But what you're doing is hurting them." "The world will hurt them worse," Linda said, tears streaming down her face. "Do you know how many children go missing every year? How many are abused by people who should protect them? I watch the news. I see what happens. At least here, with me, they're safe." "They're not safe," Carmen said firmly. "They're prisoners. Violet is 8 years old and she's never been to a real school. Owen doesn't remember what the sky looks like. Lily thinks living in a basement is normal. That's not safety, Linda. That's not love. That's fear controlling you and hurting them." Linda collapsed into a chair, sobbing. "I don't know how to stop. I'm so scared all the time. Every time I think about letting them out, I imagine all the terrible things that could happen. My mind shows me these horrible pictures and I can't make them stop." Carmen sat down next to her. "You need help. Real professional help. And those kids need to see the sun and breathe fresh air and be normal children." "They'll take them away from me," Linda whispered. "If anyone finds out, they'll take my babies and I'll never see them again." "Maybe," Carmen admitted. "But right now, you've already lost them in a different way. They're growing up in a cage. Is that really what you want for them?" Linda put her head in her hands, her whole body shaking with sobs. "I don't know what to do anymore. I'm so tired. I'm so scared all the time. I just wanted to keep them safe." "I know," Carmen said softly. "But tomorrow morning I'm calling for help. Not just for them, but for you too. You need treatment. You need support, and those children need their lives back." Linda looked up at her, mascara running down her face, looking more broken than Carmen had ever seen anyone look. "Will you stay with them when they come, the police or whoever?" "Will you be there so they're not scared?" "Yes," Carmen promised. "I will be there. I won't let them be scared." They sat in silence for a long time. Two women in a kitchen, both crying, both knowing that tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow the secret would finally come out, and 3 children would see the sun for the first time in years. Carmen just hoped everyone would survive what came next. Carmen couldn't sleep that night. She kept thinking about those 3 children in the basement and what tomorrow would bring. Every hour she'd check her phone, watching the time crawl by. Around 4 in the morning, she heard footsteps downstairs. She got up quietly and peeked over the railing. Linda was sitting on the living room couch in the darkness, just staring at the wall. She wasn't crying or moving, just sitting there like a statue. Carmen wondered what was going through her mind. Was she thinking about running, about saying goodbye to her children? Or was she finally feeling relief that this nightmare was about to end? When the sun started coming up, Carmen knew it was time. She went to the kitchen and made coffee with shaking hands. Linda appeared a few minutes later, looking like she hadn't slept at all. "I'm going to make the call now," Carmen said softly. Linda wrapped her arms around herself. "Okay, just please, let me say goodbye to them first. Let me be the one to tell them what's happening." Carmen nodded and pulled out her phone. She dialed the number for child services that she'd found the night before. A woman answered on the second ring, her voice professional but kind. "My name is Carmen Rodriguez. I need to report children being kept in unsafe conditions." Her voice cracked as she said it. 3 kids. They've been living in a basement for years, hidden from everyone. The woman on the phone asked questions calmly, taking down all the information. She told Carmen that a team would be there within the hour. Police, social workers, people trained to handle situations like this. Carmen's hands wouldn't stop shaking as she hung up. "They're coming," she told Linda. Linda stood up slowly. "I need to see my babies." They walked to the basement door together. Linda's hands trembled as she unlocked it. They went down the stairs and found the children still sleeping on their mattress, tangled together like puppies. Linda knelt beside them and gently touched Violet's shoulder. "Wake up, sweetheart. I need to talk to all of you." The children woke up slowly, rubbing their eyes. When they saw Carmen there with their mother, Violet sat up fast, looking worried. "What's wrong?" she asked. Linda gathered all 3 of them close, and Carmen could see her fighting back tears. "Listen to me carefully. Some people are coming here today. They're going to help us." "What kind of people?" Owen asked, sounding scared. "People whose job is to take care of children. They're going to take you somewhere new, somewhere with windows and sunshine and other kids to play with." Linda's voice broke, but she kept going. "You're going to live with Grandma Joyce for a while." Violet's eyes got wide. "Grandma? But you said we couldn't see her because it wasn't safe." "I was wrong, baby. I've been wrong about so many things." Tears were falling down Linda's face now. "I got sick in my head after your daddy died. I started thinking scary thoughts, believing things that weren't true. I thought I was keeping you safe down here, but really I was keeping you from having a real life." Little Lily started crying, even though she didn't understand everything. "Are we going away from you?" Linda pulled her youngest daughter onto her lap. "You have to, sweetheart. At least for now. I need to go to a special hospital where doctors can help me get better. Help me stop being so scared all the time." "But I want to stay with you," Owen said, his lip trembling. "I know, buddy, and I wish you could. But this is what's best for you. You deserve to go to real school and play outside and have friends. You deserve all the things I've been keeping from you." Linda looked at each of her children. "No matter what happens, you remember that I love you more than anything in the world. I just showed it in the wrong way." Carmen heard vehicles pulling up outside. Her stomach dropped. "Linda, they're here." Linda kissed each of her children one more time. "Carmen's going to stay with you. She won't leave you alone. Be brave for me, okay?" Carmen led them all upstairs. When she opened the front door, there were several people standing there. 2 police officers, a woman with gray hair who looked like somebody's grandmother, and a younger man carrying a briefcase. "I'm Susan," the older woman said with a gentle smile. "I'm a social worker. These are Officers Martinez and Chun, and this is Dr. Riley. We're here to help." The children huddled together, holding hands. They'd never seen this many strangers before. Lily hid behind Violet, peeking out at the newcomers with wide eyes. Susan knelt down to their level. "You must be Violet, Owen, and Lily. Your grandmother has told me so much about you. She's been looking for you for a very long time." "You know our grandma?" Violet asked suspiciously. "I do. She's getting ready right now to see you. She's so excited she could barely sit still when I talked to her this morning." Susan stood up and looked around at the basement door. "How about we all sit down in the living room? Somewhere more comfortable?" They all moved to the living room, though the children stayed close to their mother. One of the officers went to talk with Linda in the kitchen while Susan and Dr. Riley focused on the kids. Carmen sat nearby, keeping her promise to stay with them. "Have you been living downstairs for a while?" Dr. Riley asked gently. Violet nodded. Since I was really little. Owen doesn't even remember living up here. And has your mom been taking good care of you? Making sure you have food and everything you need? Yes, Violet said quickly, defensively. Mom takes care of us. She teaches us reading and math. She plays games with us. She's not mean. I can see that, Dr. Riley said kindly. Your mom loves you very much. Sometimes people who love us make mistakes because they're not feeling well. That doesn't mean they're bad people. Over the next hour, the adults asked questions and made phone calls while the children explored the main floor of the house like it was a foreign country. Owen couldn't stop staring out the windows. Lily touched everything, fascinated by the curtains and the pictures on the walls. Look how blue the sky is, Owen whispered, his nose pressed against the glass. Finally, Susan came over to the children. It's time to go meet your grandmother. She lives about 30 minutes from here. Is Mom coming? Lily asked. Susan glanced at Linda, who was talking quietly with the police officer. Not right now, sweetheart. Your mom needs to go somewhere else first to get help feeling better. The children started crying then, all three of them. They ran to Linda and wrapped their arms around her. Linda held them tight, tears streaming down her face. I love you, she kept saying. I love you so much. Be good for Grandma. Be brave. I'm so sorry for everything. It took almost 15 minutes before they could separate them. Carmen helped lead the children to the car, one of them holding each of her hands. They kept looking back at their mother, who stood on the porch watching them go. Will we see her again? Violet asked Carmen. I hope so, honey, but it might be a while. The drive to their grandmother's house was quiet. The children stared out the windows, seeing the world they'd been hidden from for so long. Trees, other houses, cars driving by, people walking their dogs. Everything was new and overwhelming. When they pulled up to a small house with a cheerful yellow door, an older woman burst out before they'd even parked. She was crying and laughing at the same time. My babies, she sobbed, pulling them into her arms. My sweet babies. I've missed you so much. Grandma? Violet said uncertainly. Yes, it's me. Oh, you've all grown so big. Come inside, come inside. I have your rooms all ready? Over the next few weeks, Carmen visited them regularly. She watched them slowly adjust to their new life. Violet started school and was nervous but excited. Owen discovered he loved drawing and filled notebooks with pictures of everything he saw. Lily had nightmares sometimes, but was getting better. I saw a dog today, Owen told Carmen during one visit. A real dog, not just in books. It licked my hand, and it was so weird and so cool. 3 months after that terrible morning, Carmen got a call from Joyce, the grandmother. The kids want to see you. Can you come for dinner? When Carmen arrived, she found all 3 children playing in the backyard. Actually playing, running around, laughing in the sunshine. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. At dinner, Violet asked the question Carmen had been dreading. Have you heard anything about Mom? I have, Carmen said carefully. She's at a treatment center getting help. The doctors say she's doing better. She's taking medicine that helps with the scary thoughts. Does she miss us? Lily asked. Every single day. She writes letters to you. Your grandma has them saved for when you're ready to read them. 6 months later, Carmen attended Owen's birthday party. Real cake, real balloons, real friends from school. He blew out his candles and made a wish, surrounded by people who loved him. Violet came to stand next to Carmen. Do you think things will ever be normal? Carmen thought about that. I think you're making your own kind of normal. And that's pretty amazing. A year after everything happened, Carmen received a letter from Linda. The handwriting was shaky, but clear. I understand now what I did to them. How my fear hurt them more than anything in the world ever could have. I stole their childhood because I was too sick to see clearly. The doctors say I'm getting better. I take my medicine every day. I go to therapy. I'm trying to become someone my children won't be afraid of. Someone who could be in their lives again someday, if they'll have me. Thank you for saving them when I couldn't save myself from my own mind. Carmen kept that letter in her drawer. She thought about it sometimes, about how complicated people were. How someone could love their children completely and still hurt them terribly. How mental illness could twist good intentions into something harmful. But mostly, she thought about 3 kids who were learning to trust the world again. Who were discovering that sunshine felt warm and dogs were friendly and other children made good playmates. They still had hard days and sad moments and questions nobody could fully answer, but they were free. They were healing. They were learning what it meant to really live, and in the end, Carmen thought, maybe that was the only happy ending possible. Not perfect, not simple, but real and honest and full of hope for tomorrow.